All right, so really quick, my game plan for today, I don't know what it's going to be, but basically we had melt up yesterday after the so much shit happened yesterday in the US. But I am guessing after Trump ordered the defense companies to stop buybacks, he capped their um the CEO compensation to 5 million, like all communist dictator kind of stuff, but whatever. I think the market kind of that scares markets a little bit. So but it's gonna shrug it off like it's been shrugging off everything. It did test here 26,000, and that's technically the main reason why then we get I guess a pullback from that. Um, what happened here this morning kind of makes sense. If we have a VPOC a volume point of control here at around basically the low 800s or 820s, which is where it consolidates here. But then, okay, absorption here, clear, um, increase in volume. Look at this huge volume here, volume candle here. And what do I expect? If the market's going to continue to do what it's been doing in the past couple of days, this thing is just going to reclaim VWAP, then reclaim this VPOC here, and then go and test those new highs again. Who knows? But that's basically what I think may be happening. This tape looks fucking hell, untradeable if you want to be scalping anything. And I'm going to go that to a second. Let's check really quick what's happening with oil, and there was no major headline that would impact oil. And so it resumes sort of its like downtrend because this thing is basically looking to trend in the low 50s. So unless we get that war headline or whatever it is that's going to pop it up, then it's just going to continue that downtrend, I would expect. And then let's check gold really quick. Also failed here, reclaim VWAP, also in a downtrend. And I would expect silver to be sort of like doing the same thing. So that's it. I'm not probably not going to be trading then until the open again. And then let's go really quick. And I did a video review yesterday, but it was late and I was tired. But I really kind of want to hammer these um, these concepts here from yesterday really quick because it's really important. And I really need to internalize this stuff. And I did mention that I blew up again, but I wasn't that upset because it's kind of so I'm adjusting my trading to because I had been losing so much in the past days. So I'm sort of adjusting my trading to going back to the basics, forcing myself to really focus on the tape, to really and recognize that these volume candles have to be faded and kind of like lock in with the order flow on the tape, which is something I wasn't doing. I was trading too much off of charts. What happened yesterday that I took it too far and I basically wasn't really paying attention to structure in the chart, but that's also super important because the chart is giving us information that we need to know. And basically, um, if you look at this chart from yesterday, it's just a 5-second chart. We have different types of action here, and we need to recognize in which mode the market is so we can trade accordingly. So again, here it was a lot of the levels here um, were crystal clear from the pre-market, and this was not too difficult to trade. And then when it kind of like goes back and forth against, the high mid 80s and the 850s, there was a rhythm here to the order flow, and it was easy to read. And when that breaks, then we need to recognize that we're not in trading a pattern anymore. And these patterns, so these um, consolidations and ranges can be scalped when there is something setting up and we are scalping that before the break of that structure. And in this case, a break happened here with the release of the data at 10 a.m. That happens to be, again, coincidentally, there was some structure there. There was um, compression. Every time we start seeing compression around within that structure that we've been scalping around that volume point of control, that's when there's a resolution about to happen. It's not a coincidence. I guess there were a lot of people waiting for that data to come out, and this thing was either going to break to the upside or the downside when the data releases. If there's no data, there still will be a resolution here. It's going to break out either to one way or the other when we see compression here. So here's where we need to stop. We have a structure and we can keep scalping that structure now that we identify that we have trend lines, and we can do it against a trend line until it's too compressed, and then we need to stop. And then we need to stop and we need to wait to see where this is going to resolve, and then get involved, and then the trading switches to something different. You're not scalping a range or a pattern anymore. You're going to join trend after a breakout. In this case, we could have joined, not really, because this was data release. The spreads were really wide. The ladder was like, kind of like wild, um, and um, and we probably wouldn't have been able to join this to the downside. But then let's zoom out a little bit and talk about the other thing that was important, which is recognizing the regime that we're in. So after the breakout happens, well, there's where you have a choice. Are you going to join trend thinking that this is going to trap here after this exhaustion candle and then keep going downwards? Or what's going to happen every time we're getting these volume exhaustions? Well, what's happening is that we have to fade them. So instead of joining trend, we have to, in this case, because of the market regime that we're in, we have to expect this to actually reverse when we see a big volume candle like this. And yes, we could have traded here the typical trap. It comes back down, takes out that level here, and then goes down a few points and maybe captures. But this would be trying to force continuation in a market that's not really doing that, and also into a VWAP that's in an uptrend, and we're trading above VWAP. So we know that they're propping the bid. And because we know that, then we should sort of, again, we're not going to be in scalper mode, but also we're not going to be in momentum continuation and look for moves to run further mode, because we know that that's not happening right now. So the important thing here is that we're trading that structure until we can. Then there's going to be a resolution to that structure, and then we need to stop scalping and switch to a different mode. Um, in this case, perhaps we could have faded this when we see this. There is a bias here. The market regime is not just about market makers being aggressive both on the offer and on the bid. They're actually propping the bid. So we see moves happen more easily to the upside after a reversal, after this is soaked here, and then we get this first momentum to the upside with this candle here, and then it sort of traps and it continues up higher. So and perhaps we can be joining that. But we need to switch off the scalper mode. No more scalper mode. Scalping only happens when there's a clearly identified range and there is structure that's leading into a potential breakout that will happen or will fail or whatever. But that's when we're going to be in scalper mode. We don't have defined levels to scalp off of, and we don't have a rhythm of order flow that's predictable and easily readable if we're not within a structure like that. So that was my mistake, because I kept in that. I didn't switch off. I kept being in that scalper mode when this was happening. And actually, I did. I lost some when I lost a lot of the profits I had gained here when this happened, and I wasn't prepared for it. But then I made it back, because this was Also, there was, this was scalpable here because there was sort of a range, but that's basically I'm getting lucky because I got this range here and I could scalp. And but this wasn't really a defined structure like this. So, I easily could have. Um, this is not where I should be scalping, even though it worked at the moment, at the time. Um, and I also did some scalping here again, and it did work. And I kind of like it was okay, but I shouldn't be. This is not scalpable. This is not scalpable. This is scalpable. Um, and then we get after the China news about not letting companies use Nvidia chips, which is like a recycled news that's coming out. Has come out 2 or 3 times in the past month. We get this. uh, Consistent with the regime that we're saying that we've been talking about, this flush is soaked and then back up it goes. But then also, this is where you need to pay close attention to the chart and see what is this looking like. This is not clearly not something scalpable like this, but not just that. This thing is so thin and so algorithm. This is like it's like they turned on the algo and it's like tight, 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 grindy action here all the way to take out the highs. It's clear, very clear on the, visually clear the way this controlled action is happening on the way up, and you need to recognize this. So again, throughout this whole thing, I never switched off from scalping mode. This is just, I mean, here, okay, it kind of worked. Here, this is where I got killed. I got, you know, screwed, obviously, because it's impossible to be in scalper mode when we have this kind of price action. So you need to recognize that. You need to be looking at the tape and immediately be like, oh shit, look at how this is looking. Um, and actually just, zoom out and use more like a higher time frame technicals and then join and stay in if that's the way you're going to trade it. And speaking of that, when you zoom, even though we're getting different types of action here or whatever, if you zoom out, you're actually getting a pretty textbook here. Kind of like a range here, and then it breaks out, takes out the highs, and then consolidates in a tight consolidation here up above the highs, and that's like the textbook, breakout setup that I'm used to trading. And here you have to take it because it's there. We haven't had it very like clear and clean in the past few days, and despite all this mess, we actually have that. It's taking out the highs and it's consolidating up, holding up above the highs that it just took out. And what do we get? Well, we get a breakout here. Um, um, so again, this is difficult to trade. Maybe here when I mean, look at how that. Okay, so you don't trade anymore when the action's like that. But you need to recognize and know how things are on the very micro level. How do they look on the chart? What's that price at, what's the range of each one of those 5 second or 1 minute candles, whatever you're using, to know, and adjust accordingly. So if I had stopped scalping here, um, it would have been actually a pretty good day. I made a lot of mistakes here within the scalping here after looking at the recordings. A couple of times where I misread the tape, and if I had read it correctly, I would have made double what I made here, but it's okay. Well, I can keep working on that. But the important thing is identifying basically the mode that we have to be in. Um, and that comes from looking at the chart. Um, that's what I wanted to add to yesterday's review. All right.